on Zoo FM, Brekkie with Sarah. And I've got Dubbo Mayor Matt Dickerson on the phone. How are you going, Matt?
Yeah, good, thanks, Sarah. Good to be chatting to you this morning.
Yeah, it's our first chat for 2022. I know you talked with Dan a couple of weeks ago, but it's good to hear from you. Now, you're kind of in a bit of isolation at the moment. What's going on?
Yeah, look, my darling wife unfortunately tested positive to COVID-19, so that means the whole household's in lockdown. So 2 of my kids are here and myself and my wife in another part of the house, obviously. So, yeah, look, it's a bit frustrating because there's lots of things I want to be out there in the community and doing, and I've got to stay at home. But at least we've got technology these days. So you've got phone calls and you've got video conferences and you can keep doing lots of things via email. So continue on. I've just had to delay a couple of face-to-face meetings until after Australia Day. I'm out of quarantine just in time for Australia Day, luckily.
Oh, perfect timing, perfect timing. And you're a bit of a pro with tech, so there's no worries there, right?
Well, it seems to be quite comfortable, and I think people are pretty good actually overall now. It's not so much being a pro with tech. I think because COVID came along and everyone had to work out how to work remotely, suddenly everyone's okay at doing video conference calls and they're getting better on emails. And so I think it's okay now. I think people are generally comfortable with that sort of technology. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, you'd be crazy not to know how to use Zoom nowadays. But you did get to do a few things before you did go into isolation. The first couple of weeks for everyone in the new council, filled with kind of excursions all over the region. What was that like?
Yeah, we've only really done Dubbo so far. We've got some more lined up to get to the broader region, to get out to Wellington and some other areas. But it is fascinating. And I remember the first time I got on the council back in 2004 and we were doing the same tours and I went, wow, I didn't know we did that. Oh, that's fascinating. And so one of the things that we got to do as a group of councillors during the week or last week was to go to the water treatment plant. And so that's fascinating. People turn their taps on and nice, clean, fresh, safe drinking water comes out. You don't really think about much in terms of how that happens. You think, oh, well, it gets treated somewhere, I suppose. So I guess that's what happens. But when you go there to the plant and look at the sophistication of the operations and see how advanced the technology is there, the councillors are absolutely fascinated by it. I mean, again, I've been lucky enough to be through it a couple of times before, but it still always amazes me just that process and the volume you're talking about. It's not just a simple little, we'll just treat a bit of water and then send it out to a few residents. We use a lot of water. So it's great to see that sort of technology. We went up to the depot and just to get an idea of the lawns get mowed around Dubbo, paths are taken care of, just the general maintenance, and just to see the sophistication of that operation. Again, sometimes the lawn gets a bit too long somewhere. You might be down Trackarriley, for example, and you go, oh, gee, the lawn's a bit long. What are those slack council workers doing? But of course, if you look behind the scenes and look at just how good a program is in place there, again, the councillors are absolutely fascinated by the process there and the way that that is all done and structured. And obviously, you've got to increase that mowing in summertime and then reduce that in wintertime, and just in general, just how good all those operations are. So that was all fascinating.
Yeah, I can imagine. You don't really think about that kind of thing just as a local, just how much work goes into, keeping Dubbo and surrounds like really beautiful and working and everything like that. Is there any particular part that council is going to look at improving?
Oh, all of it. I mean, and that's the part of it. It's really always about how do we make it better. And even just when we're looking at this program, looking at the wall of how they had all their mowing and all their maintenance crews, and even some of the councillors there sitting around and go, oh, hold on, have you thought about doing this and how does that operate there? So there's always ideas flowing in. Obviously, with water, you just want to make sure that the water is always treated and always clean, and you don't think about it until it's not. So in terms of improving that, it's really about just making sure we keep delivering what residents need, which is basically clean drinking water the whole time. The place we haven't been for a tour through yet, and it's something that you don't want to go before breakfast, is our sewage treatment plant. It is actually fascinating, and I remember a few years ago, just at the last time I was mayor, we were just doing an upgrade on that so that it's a much bigger facility now. But even that, I know it's not nice to talk about that around breakfast time, but it is even fascinating as well. You flush the toilet. You don't think about it after that, but something has to happen with that. And even the process that goes through and where it ends up, I think that's all fascinating, but that's all in front of councillors at this stage.
Right. Well, I guess we'll watch this space and see what happens in the next year or so then. There's also some code of conduct training that you guys did. Was there a focus on anything in particular?
Just making sure you understand it. And it's a bit sad we've got to do so much code of conduct training. In my last time on council, code of conduct training was optional, but a good council like Dubbo used to actually take councillors through that training and make sure we understood the processes and understood how it all worked. Now it's compulsory. That's one of the things the state government has changed, not because of Dubbo, but because of just poor behaviour across the state with different councils. So it's a bit sad because really code of conduct training is pretty simple. You can sum it up in a couple of words. Be nice to people, be respectful to people, and you're pretty much going to be okay. But unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't happen. And so it's good to have that training just to be aware of your responsibilities as a councillor and to be aware of the processes if things don't go according to plan. In other words, how code of conducts are lodged, how the process occurs, and even just the cost to council. The code of conduct cost in the last year for council, for us, for residents of Dubbo and Wellington, cost us $250,000 in the process because so many code of conducts were lodged. And that's not against the public for lodging them. They absolutely had every right to lodge them. It was just poor behaviour on council or by councillors at the time that made all those residents want to basically put in some code of conduct complaints. So my aim is to have no code of conduct complaints because we've got councillors behaving nicely and giving the correct information out to people. So hopefully we won't have that sort of cost incurred and that money can go into things like roads or other things to make the city better.
Yeah, I think that's great news that they're making it compulsory, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot. Now, that you've had a look at it all, is there anything particular that's different since your last time in council?
No, only that thing that it has been made compulsory rather than some of that training being optional before, and the extent of the training and just how much training you've got to go through. And again, they're all good things. But again, unfortunately, it has been because of various incidents, things that have happened that might not have been the best things to happen. Because of that, they got to the point now where a lot more of this training is now compulsory. It would be nice in a perfect world to think that everyone just did the right thing and it was all okay. And every council put councillors through training. I've done lots of training before that wasn't compulsory, but because it was deemed that it was sensible to put councillors through a whole range of training. It's at that point now where the state government has said, well, we can't really trust councillors to do all the correct training. We can't trust councillors to get it right. So unfortunately, here are all these components of training that are compulsory. Even WH&S, there's compulsory work health and safety training that you've got to do now as a councillor because ultimately you may be responsible for that work health and safety across the entire organisation. So lots of those things there. It's not so much that it's different from when I was last on council, but it's probably the compulsory nature of that training.
Well, I think it sounds like we've got a very bright few years with you as a Dubbo mayor now, because it sounds like you really, really care for the region. So that's really awesome. It's always good to speak with you, Matt Dickerson, the Dubbo mayor, and we'll chat to you again in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. That sounds great, Sarah. And I think we've got a whole group of councillors that really care about the region, which is fantastic.